It is exactly 13 after 9 o'clock on this very cold morning in Johannesburg. I'm sure the weather is not that great around the country, but hey, the weather services are telling us that it's going to start warming up by midday, but right now it doesn't seem like that at all. But there you go. Welcome back. This is News and Views on Salam Media, and as I explained a little earlier on, this hour of the program is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Our next guest is Khalid Mather. He is going to talk to us about something important. He's an environmentalist who has a background in activism for climate change, and currently he works as a sustainability consultant across a wide range of fields, where he says they are mainstreaming climate change considerations. Now, when I read out this very brief bio on Khalid, I was kind of wondering what would his grandparents have said if they'd heard that this is the field of study he's going into, would have understood what this really means. Assalamu alaikum to you, Khalid. Welcome to the program. I couldn't resist that, but
Walaikum.
I am sure they would have wondered about your choice.
No, that's actually a great point of departure to pick up the conversation. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. So, I actually come from a small town about 80 k's out of Durban called Stanger. And if you're like in the mindset of grandparents, that's the nature of my upbringing. It's small town, rural vibes. But I had a great appreciation through my father and through my community for nature, fishing, and the environment, and sugarcane and farms. Agriculture is, a widespread practice around there. So I just leaned into this more dynamically with my pursuit of studies, and I went into the environmental sciences, the natural sciences. I wanted to understand the processes that make this glorious world work. So I think my grandparents, perhaps they would be proud because they are beneficiaries of all the bounties of this planet. And if someone can explain it to them that these are things worthy of being looked after, maybe they'd find pride in that.
Subhanallah, that's wonderful. I kind of also wonder, Khalid, you know, our community, traditionally, the moment our children are ready to go into tertiary, as you know, and I know I may sound like a stuck record because I say this all the time, I bring it up on my shows all the time. We kind of just want to push them what we perceive as being the correct professions to be going to, and that is um, medicine, law, and accountancy. And we don't apply our minds beyond that. And I think it's crucially important that we start thinking out of the box. And I should also imagine that you are one of the few Muslim young people that have gone into this field of study.
Actually, you're right that the conventional, I would say, more safety, but even in this day and age, none of those professions are safe. But what's come to the forefront in terms of education is that things which are aligned with the science, technologies, education, the STEM fields, those encapsulate those broader safety professions that that were conventionally like doctors, lawyers. But I am one of the few, I would say, right now, but I'm just the tip of the iceberg. I feel like as our youth get more educated and literate in terms of technology and what's important in the world, they are going to want to pursue saving the world and living sustainable lives, having a positive impact. It's all part of our being, leaving a positive future for those that come after us. So it's very collaborative to enjoin these philosophies. So I feel like I'm no one really special. I've done a bit of activism in the past, and even in the future, we are in Joburg, Wits hosting a climate change movie soon. But it's great to kind of engage this because we Muslims in a community, but we're part of the broader world. So how do we bring that outside global thinking inside? That's like my drive.
Absolutely. And as Muslims, we should be aware of our environment and taking care of our environment. You are an environmentalist, environmental scientist, now working in environmental, social, and governance. That's ESG space. Um, can you explain all of this? And also at the same time, by explaining to me and our other viewers and listeners, it would kind of give some sort of career guidance to young people who probably still are not quite sure what they should be studying for.
Gee, no, totally, I can do that. Well, we must first understand that climate change is a very broad and existential threat. It has impacts on every sector of society. I've dealt with mines, I've dealt with the healthcare sector, financial institutions. All of them are getting primed to be assessed by regulatory bodies, which are kind of navigating the real impacts of climate change and baking them into how they want those industries to perform. So in the accounting and financial world, ESG is synonymous to sustainability. How can a company be both financially sustainable, that is, make a profit in perpetuity and also pay their workers, but also how can it be materially sustainable? That means, does it destroy the environment through its resources, the input value chain, or does it destroy the environment? How does it impact? Rather, let me just not say destroy, because some businesses can have positive impacts also on the environment. So ESG is applying that lens to different businesses in terms of the environment, social and governance impacts. But because that's just the sustainability branch of it. Any person from any sector that you operate in can become more familiar with climate change. Whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in agriculture, finances, or auditing, there's many lenses which are now adopting nature and sustainability as part of just how the businesses operate. Even telecommunications and media, there's new regulations and kind of codices coming out for the businesses.
Um, I'm going to talk to you obviously about COP28, and I have no doubt in my mind that I know a few years ago there was a lot of noise and awareness regarding plastics pollution. I think that's just one aspect of pollution. I mean, when I walk in the CBD areas of anywhere in South Africa, it, it, it is actually scary when you see how the streets, the gutters are absolutely polluted with all sorts of rubbish, and the impact. And I think if just each person in South Africa can be aware of being conscious of how they dispose of their waste, we probably wouldn't be sitting in the situation we're sitting in now. Blocked drains and the water crisis. I think pollution impact on that as well. But of course, the big drive a couple of years ago was plastics pollution. Is it still ongoing? Is it still a threat going forward? Do you think that we've been conscientized enough around that specific issue? Because I mean, we've been told that even the fish have tiny. It is found. Scientists have found that in their bellies or possibly even stuck to their flesh are the minutest particles of plastic, and then we ingesting it, and that is why we're having all sorts of cancers that we're presenting with in this day and age.
No, 100%, totally right. So these elements are connected. Plastic pollution, COP28, water scarcity, they're all connected under the theme of we're surpassing our planetary boundaries and we're not using resources sustainably. Plastic, if you're maybe not aware, is a type of hydrocarbon. It's carbon just like what you put in your car, but in the form that's been compressed and refined into what we use now in our day to day, and it degrades over time through sun and through weather, and it becomes these microplastics. But essentially, COP28 was trying to get a global stock take on how we're doing against what we talk about in the climate space as adaptation and mitigation, how we're making progress against stopping more greenhouse gases mitigation into the atmosphere, and how we're adapting to the problems caused by climate change, which include the runaway pollution that is, what can I say, more aggravated when there's ever weather disruptions. As you can imagine, these social issues lead to the rivers becoming polluted, and then there's a climate event where rough storms, they flush all the, I would like to say, pollutants from inland onto the beaches, and that's how we continuously in a cycle of unmaintained climate disaster where people are trying to adapt at some level. Then you have runaway climate change impacts, which has exploding pollution problems all over the world, and they're having secondary effects, just like you mentioned. Now it's in our system. The microplastics are within our waterways, and we have to eat that. And they're finding microplastics everywhere in the air, even in some parts of the world. It's a pressing issue.
And absolutely. I kind of wonder if our government and environmentalists like yourself and COP28 is going to go full out in creating awareness once again, because it seems as if all of those awareness campaigns kind of have faded into the background. And I think now more so than ever, we need to become more and more aware and more conscious about the impact we're making. Each and every one of us are leaving behind a footprint which could further damage the environment and future generations as well. So, having said that, I'm also wondering about, obviously, COP28 government would have, South African government would have been represented there. When we talk about COP28, what has come out of there? What can we look forward to regarding the part we play and the difference each individual can make going forward?
Well, I wish I had more positive news, but from every, so they say in a dark cloud there's a silver lining. We must take the positive and pivot from there. So what COP28 revealed is that progress was slow in across all the parameters that we're looking at arresting climate change, whether that includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions and also making our societies more resilient to climate change, but also how we get the support, the financial and the physical support out there to developing nations. And I think this circles back to your question in how is awareness tied to support? Because we're we're in that phase where we understand climate change, and there's a bit about nature, then there's a bit about pollution, then there's a bit about electricity and energy. Well, it is all connected. The support that's coming through the conferences like COP28 are financial support for developing countries to embark on things like the just energy transition. And the just energy transition essentially speaks to transforming our carbon intensive energy system into one that's more based on renewables. And this is in line with climate mitigation protocols, which are mitigating the amount of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. So, in one sense, it is stopping the climate change from getting any worse by stopping more carbon into the atmosphere and it getting warmer, etc. But on the other hand, it's trying to be just and enable jobs and bring people into the economy, because as you close down the coal-fired power stations, which have to close down, by the way, they're reaching the end of their life. They're man-made machines which have a shelf life and they have to be decommissioned. So to make up for the generational shortfall that's coming from decommissioning, we have to build new energy. And also in building new energy, we have to enable livelihoods and manage the fallout of people whose livelihoods are dependent on coal and the carbon intensive infrastructure we rely on.
So, when we talk about just energy transition, our carbon footprints, um, pollution, the environment, when we look at it, I mean, I was quite amused this weekend when we were talking about the changing weather patterns. My husband was saying, where have you ever heard about us having snow in September? I think 30, 40 years ago, it did snow in Johannesburg in the month of September. But going forward, when we looked at the pictures of the snowfalls in the KZN area, Van Riebeeck, etc., it looked like pictures out of Europe. That being said, we do know, my husband kept on banging about the situation. This is directly due to climate change. We need to become more conscious. Global warming is creating this phenomena, etc., etc. And we also know in other parts of in the global north, for example, they've just come out of their summer, and we know what they've experienced, and they've been experiencing fires, the most devastating of fires in Greece, or some of the Greek islands, and in Portugal and in other parts of the world. So this is the phenomena directly due to climate change, and that is due to the damage we are creating in the environment, not only in South Africa but globally. Are all of these lessons, whatever comes out of COP28 and all of these talk shops, is it being filtered down to the man in the street via our schools? And, if we as parents can't educate our children, at least they can educate us through lessons that they're learning at schools.
Gee, no, it's totally a two-way street, the parents and the kids, because the children definitely are the future. They are going to exist and occupy those positions in the future that we are leaving for them to occupy. So it's a two-way street. If you take responsibility for your adult actions today and be conscious about even the amount of meat you consume, because from Islamic standpoint, our Prophet, peace be upon him, said that meat is almost as intoxicating as wine, so you must limit it. We just have to apply a level of detail and granularity to our lives, which we haven't done before. And this also ties into Islam. Ikra, educate ourselves, do our research. What are the positive and negative impacts of what we do in our lives? And how does that tie to our community? How does that tie to the world? And yeah, I leave it in the future generations' hands, Auntie. And I hope, they do them the most. They do well.
Inshallah. I'm going to end off with one more crucial question or comment. We do know that not only in South Africa, but all around the world, there's the story about food security. And at the rate we are going, overconsumption, over advertising, overproduction, really there is unimaginable wastage. What is that doing as far to our food security situation, and also all of the waste that then gets dumped? Wastes of all forms, clothing, secondhand clothing is being dumped, and also toxic waste is being dumped. And I can't even begin to imagine what it's doing to our environment. How do you, as a scientist, as an environmentalist, see this? Does it give you sleepless nights?
Uh, it would give me sleepless nights if I wasn't doing anything about it. But Alhamdulillah, because I, like so many, powerful players in the space, even our South African institutions, Gift of the Givers, a lot of the NGOs, they come on board for environmental issues. And, there's a lot of cross-community collaboration between CSR programs, CSOs. But just to get back onto that point, overconsumption, it ties back into understanding our impact and doing the research, taking responsibility for ourselves. But within the ESG, or as I can say, the sustainability space, we have a component called circularity, which speaks to how the resources that a business utilizes actually flow within a community, and the packaging and the food waste. Alhamdulillah, the planet is bountiful. We could create enough food for every person. It's just a matter of the financial systems delivering that to the people in need, and how we regulate our own behaviors and like obscene ones at times. Gee.
Khalid, we're going to have to leave it there, but your closing thoughts regarding the situation on accelerating the transition to a sustainable future, COP28.
I believe that every human being should try and inform themselves and not leave it into the responsibility of governments or corporations or even NGOs or people like myself to try and dictate your future. Try and connect your well-being to societies and see how much you depend on society for that support system and what positive benefit you can put back out there.
Khalid Mather, thank you indeed for being with us. You obviously an environmental scientist now working in the environmental, social, and governance, which is ESG space. Thank you indeed for breaking that down and making it very understandable to myself and our viewers this morning. And we need very many more Khalid Mathers in our community to truly drive this very strong message home so that we can become truly responsible citizens going forward and responsible Muslims. Actually, we as Muslims should know all of this and should be practicing it as we practice all of our daily rituals as well. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us guidance, inshallah. Thank you for being with me on the show. Assalamu alaikum to
Shukran.
you.
Wa alaikum salam. Shukran.
9:34 news and views moving along, and let's go for our ad break. When we get back, we'll be talking some more, so please stay with me.